How much did that study cost us, the taxpayers? It didn't say. It just apologized for the harm that it was done, and it really kind of excused it, in my opinion, too, because it was saying that at that time in history, those were acceptable standards. So that's sort of my point to my last video, was that, okay, so if the acceptable standards, like right now, the acceptable standards to the higher educated is transgenderism, pushing it on children, it's drag time, story hour in the classroom, okay, they can make all the excuses they want for that and say, well, that's what was accepted that was what the standard was at this time. So then what, in 10 years, they could say, yeah, we had to research all those people because at that time it was the accepted standard. Well, it clearly shows that the people that are heading up ethical or ethics, period, in professional organizations, especially in regards to healthcare, medicine, nursing, they don't have any ethics. They don't. They're either too weak to stand up for and speak loudly for the truth, which in my opinion, that is what nursing should do. But instead, we have a professional organization that everybody will stand by and follow because they're experts. No, they're not. There's something to be said, like, and you can't really study the higher educated because the people that would study them would be the same type character that they all are. Granted, I'm sure there's many higher educated doctors, and but so I know that it's not everyone, but let's just say pretty much the research end of it. They somehow get out of school and just have because there's too many different researchers that have done this ongoing. And we currently see it going on right now with this pushing this on youth. There's no reason there is no justifying pushing it on children. There is no justifying supporting it on children. And there's no reason, I don't care what the associations of medicine and nursing want to give, for why we should do it to children. There is no reason that they can't wait until they're an adult. But this is the same thing back then. And so then the video I just did about UCSF, then they apologize for the harm, but they kind of excuse it away too, because they say it was the accepted standard. But if you have a moral compass, it shouldn't have been. Honestly, why wasn't anybody held accountable? I mean, one of them died, but none of these people have ever I mean, I'm not just talking about that report. I mean, even going back to, all of it. Nobody's, by the time they tell you, most of these researchers have died. In this case, the UCSF, the video I just did, one of them, Dr. Mauerbach, he's still on staff there. But why is there a difference? So just because it was the standard back then it means there shouldn't be any accountability because you didn't have a conscience? Because some of this research they do, you literally have to not have a conscience to do it. Now, I think the universities, especially, your most Ivy League ones, somehow have convinced these students, especially since they're in their classrooms for years and just hear the same garbage all the time, that it somehow seems to, I don't want to say it eliminates their moral compass, but it's certainly not what they lead with. And I think that's what, regardless what profession you're in, that should always be what you lead with. And yet they've worked around that. They've done certain experiments because, well, it was for this reason and that reason. And some, there's no reason at all. It was just to do it, just to see what would happen. I mean, and here's what's really sickening is that, so the research knows from many of their social experiments what happens when you put people in isolation. So when they isolated people during COVID-19, there's a reason why so many of us say they know exactly that what they were doing would end up causing more harm in the end. I mean, how is it that I'm not higher? I mean, I'm a registered nurse, but I'm not higher educated like Magnet of Nursing would want me. Yeah, because they push forever. I mean, it got in the past 10 years in nursing where if you're an associate degree nurse, you're totally devalued from the moment you're hired. Doesn't matter what kind of career you've had, you're just devalued. And then you have to sign a contract that you'll go get higher education. Then they move the marker all the time. American Nurses Association then says if you say you've gotten your master's and you have an NP, then they want you to get your specialty exam and something. It just ends up being more money in their pockets. And then everything they support, the people that head up these associations, they're just morally bankrupt, which is why we become a society that in our healthcare system, it becomes so morally bankrupt that instead of people going to jail for not providing safe staffing, like I understand if here and there you'd have short staff, but now it's just a standard that no matter where you go, because the CEOs know they can get away with it. So, and that's a direct, like American Nurses Association loves to highlight, no, we support more staffing. No, you don't. No, you don't, because you've stood with those CEOs. You've been you look at what you've been lobbying in Congress. You haven't supported nurses at all. You're a disgrace. But they're so higher educated, they're full of themselves. That's what I've noticed. They're full of themselves. Full of themselves. And that's just not show that you have an ability to be humble, but I don't think you can be humble when you're going down a moral path that's dark and depraved. I don't see how American Nurses Association won't recover from this. They won't. I don't care how many nurses in America, and I don't know many, to be quite honest, that support this on youth. There's only one hospital I worked at that actually was pushing it on youth. It was disturbing. And it was a freestanding psych facility. Otherwise, most nurses are like, if you're an adult, do what you want. I don't care. But on kids, most nurses are like, no, it's crazy. And most nurses can't stand the pronoun stuff. We have too much to think about, and it gets too confusing, and it's all ridiculous. But that's because of who's setting the standard of care. And the same people setting the standard of care are just like the researchers. They don't have a moral compass. They don't operate from that level. They operate from that it's all about money. At the end of the day, it's about two things. One, it's for pharma and money. Okay, that's what research is really for. Pharma can go try to, find some big cure, and then they really never, again, the medicine has never cured anything. It's interesting that no doctors or, your experts of the world really want to admit that fact, but they want to say vaccines cured things. Well, no, they didn't, though. A cure is a cure. It's eradicated. Nothing's been eradicated. Okay, they just want you to continue to go get more vaccines, and it doesn't seem like they eradicate anything. They like to say they did, but then because they're experts, they get to change the data just, on their whim. So they knew from social experiments throughout the history that you shouldn't isolate people, you shouldn't lock people down, you shouldn't force masks on people. They knew all this, and they did it anyway. So again, it was about wanting to control society, just like youth gender-affirming care is about trying to mold society to accept a depraved agenda. And yet that same group of people, they're all kind of the same. They don't operate from a moral compass. They're the same as the researchers. And this ultimately goes to why they hated Trump, too, because Trump wanted to cut funding to research. I don't think he was going to cut it altogether, but he was going to cut a big portion of it. And now I see why, because they have gotten out of control, and we don't have any people that are higher educated, not too many that I see that are, at the forefront, that are the ones highlighted, that operate from a moral compass. So that will never lead to good results. It's too bad none of these experts or higher educated knew that. But if you go to any school or any university for so long that you no longer have a conscience, and you paid all that money to get that education to walk out with no conscience, Well, that just seems pretty plain old stupid to me.